2 Maccabees, chapter 12, verse 17, to chapter 14, verse 17. Then departed they from thence 750 furlongs, and came to Caracah unto the Jews that are called Tubiani. But as for Timotheus, they found him not in the places, for before he had dispatched anything, he departed from thence, having left a very strong garrison in a certain hold. Howbeit Dositheus and Sosipater, who were of Maccabees' captains, went forth, and slew those that Timotheus had left in the fortress, above 10,000 men. And Maccabees ranged his army by bands, and set them over the bands, and went against Timotheus, who had about him 120,000 men of foot, and 2,500 horsemen. Now when Timotheus had knowledge of Judas's coming, he sent the women and children and the other baggage unto a fortress called Carnion. For the town was hard to besiege, and uneasy to come unto, by reason of the straitness of all the places. But when Judas's first band came into sight, the enemies, being smitten with fear and terror through the appearing of him that seeth all things, fled up main, one running this way, another that way, so as that they were often hurt of their own men, and wounded with the points of their own swords. Judas also was very earnest in pursuing them, killing those wicked wretches, of whom he slew about 30,000 men. Moreover, Timotheus himself fell into the hands of Dositheus and Sosipater, whom he besought with much craft to let him go with his life, because he had many of the Jews' parents, and the brethren of some of them, who, if they put him to death, should not be regarded. So when he had assured them with many words that he would restore them without hurt, according to the agreement, they let him go for the saving of their brethren. The Maccabees marched forth to Carnion, and to the temple of Artagates, and in there he slew 25,000 persons. And after he had put to flight and destroyed them, Judas removed the host toward Ephron, a strong city, wherein Lysias abode, and a great multitude of divers nations, and the strong young men kept the walls, and defended them mightily, wherein also was great provision of engines and darts. But when Judas and his company had called upon Almighty God, who with his power breaketh the strength of his enemies, they won the city, and slew 25,000 of them that were within. From thence they departed to Scythopolis, which lieth 600 furlongs from Jerusalem. But when the Jews that dwelt there had testified that the Scythopolitans dealt lovingly with them, and entreated them kindly in the time of their adversity, they gave them thanks, desiring to them to be friendly still unto them. And so they came to Jerusalem, the feast of weeks approaching. And after the feast, called Pentecost, they went forth against Gorgias the governor of Idumea, who came out with 3,000 men of foot and 400 horsemen. And it happened that in their fighting together a few of the Jews were slain, at which time Dositheus, one of Basinor's company, who was on horseback, and a strong man, was still upon Gorgias, and taking hold of his coat, drew him by force. And when he would have taken that cursed man alive, a horseman of Thracia, coming upon him, smote off his shoulder, so that Gorgias fled unto Marissa. Now when they that were with Gorgias had fought long, and were weary, Judas called upon the Lord, that he would show himself to be their helper and leader of the battle. And with that he began in his own language, and sung psalms with a loud voice, and rushing unawares upon Gorgias' men, he put them to flight. So Judas gathered his host, and came into the city of Odolam. And when the 7th day came, they purified themselves, as the custom was, and kept the Sabbath in the same place. And upon the day following, as the use had been, Judas and his company came to take up the bodies of them that were slain, and to bury them with their kinsmen in their fathers' graves. Now under the coats of every one that was slain, they found things consecrated to the idols of the Jamnites, which is forbidden the Jews by the law. Then every man saw that this was the cause wherefore they were slain. All men therefore praising the Lord, the righteous judge, who would open the things that were hid, betook themselves unto prayer, and besought him that the sin committed might wholly be put out of remembrance. Besides, that noble Judas exhorted the people to keep themselves from sin, for so much as they saw before their eyes the things that came to pass for the sins of those that were slain. And when he had made a gathering throughout the company to the sum of 2,000 drachms of silver, he sent it to Jerusalem to offer a sin offering, doing therein very well and honestly, in that he was mindful of the resurrection. For if he had not hoped that they were slain should have risen again, it had been superfluous and in vain to pray for the dead. And also, in that he perceived that there was great favor laid up for those that died godly, it was a holy and good thought. Whereupon he made a reconciliation for the dead, that they might be delivered from sin. In the 149th year it was told Judas that Antiochus Eupator was coming with a great power into Judea, and with him Lysias his protector, and ruler of the affairs, having either of them a Grecian power of footmen, 110,000, and horsemen 5,300, and elephants 22, and 300 chariots armed with hooks. Menelaus also joined himself with them, and with great dissimulation encouraged Antiochus, not for the safeguard of the country, but because he thought to have been made governor. But the king of kings moved Antiochus's mind against this wicked wretch, and Lysias informed the king that this man was the cause of all mischief, so that the king commanded to bring him unto Berea, and to put him to death, as the manner is in that place. Now there was in that place a tower of 50 cubits high, full of ashes, and it had a round instrument, which on every side hang down into the ashes. And whosoever was condemned of sacrilege, or had committed any other grievous crime, there did all men thrust him unto death. Such a death it happened that wicked man to die, not having so much as burial in the earth, and that most justly. For inasmuch as he had committed many sins about the altar, whose fire and ashes were holy, he received his death in ashes. Now the king came with a barbarous and haughty mind to do far worse to the Jews than had been done in his father's time. Which things, when Judas perceived, he commanded the multitude to call upon the Lord night and day, that if ever at any other time, he would now also help them, being at the point to be put from their law, from their country, and from the holy temple. And that he would not suffer the people, that had even now been but a little refreshed, to be in subjection to the blasphemous nations. So when they had all done this together, and besought the merciful Lord with weeping and fasting, and lying flat upon the ground 3 days long, Judas, having exhorted them, commanded they should be in a readiness. And Judas, being apart with the elders, determined before the king's host should enter into Judea, and get the city, to go forth and try the matter in fight by the help of the Lord. So when he had committed all to the Creator of the world, and exhorted his soldiers to fight manfully, even unto death, for the laws, the temple, the city, the country, and the commonwealth, he camped by Modin. And having given the watchword to them that were about him, victory is of God. With the most valiant and choice young men, he went into the king's tent by night, and slew in the camp about 4,000 men, and the chiefest of the elephants, with all that were upon him. And at last they filled the camp with fear and tumult, and departed with good success. This was done in the break of the day, because the protection of the Lord did help him. Now when the king had taken a taste of manliness of the Jews, he went about to take the holds by the policy, and marched toward Bethsura, which was a stronghold of the Jews. But he was put to flight, failed, and lost of his men. For Judas had conveyed unto them that were in it such things as were necessary. But Rhodocus, who was in the Jews' host, disclosed the secrets to the enemies. Therefore he was sought out, and when they had gotten him, they put him in prison. The king treated with them in Bethsura the second time, gave his hand, took theirs, departed, fought with Judas, was overcome. Heard that Philip, who was left over the affairs in Antioch, was desperately bent, confounded, entreated the Jews, submitted himself, and sware to all equal conditions, agreed with them, and offered sacrifice, armed the temple, and dealt kindly with the place, and accepted well of Maccabees, made him principal governor from Ptolemais unto the Gerenians. Came to Ptolemais, the people there was grieved for the covenants, for they stormed, because they would make their covenants void. Lysias went up to the judgment seat, said as much as could be in defense of the cause, persuaded, pacified, made them well affected, returned to Antioch. Thus it went touching the king's coming and departing. After 3 years was Judas informed that Demetrius, the son of Seleucus, having entered by the haven of Tripolis with a great power and navy, had taken the country, and killed Antiochus, and Lysias his protector. Now when Alcimus, who had been high priest, and had defiled himself wilfully in the times of their mingling with the Gentiles, saying that by no means he could save himself, nor have any more access to the holy altar, came to King Demetrius in the 150th year, presenting unto him a crown of gold, and a palm, and also of the boughs which were used solemnly in the temple, and so that day he held his peace. Howbeit, having got an opportunity to further his foolish enterprise, and being called in the council by Demetrius, and asked how the Jews stood affected, and what they intended, he answered thereunto. Those of the Jews that be called the Assyrians, whose captain is Judas Maccabeus, nourish war, and are seditious, and will not let the realm be in peace. Therefore I, being deprived of mine ancestors' honor, I mean the high priesthood, am now come hither. First, verily, for the unfeigned care I have of things pertaining to the king, and secondly, even for that I intend the good of mine own citizens, for all our nation is in no small misery through the unadvised dealing with them aforesaid. Wherefore, O king, seeing thou knowest all these things, be careful for the country and our nation, which is pressed on every side, according to the clemency that thou readily showest unto all. For as long as Judas liveth, it is not possible that the state should be quiet. This was no sooner spoken of him, but others of the king's friends, being maliciously set against Judas, did more incense Demetrius. And forthwith calling Nicanor, who had been master of the elephants, and making him governor over Judea, he sent him forth, commanding him to slay Judas, and to scatter them that were with him, and to make Alcimus high priest of the great temple. Then the heathen that had fled out of Judea from Judas came to Nicanor by flocks, thinking the harm and calamities of the Jews to be their welfare. Now when the Jews heard of Nicanor's coming, and that the heathen were up against them, they cast earth upon their heads, and made supplication to him that had established his people forever, and who always helpeth his portion with manifestation of his presence. So at the commandment of the captain they removed straightway from thence, and came near unto them at the town of Dessau. Now Simon, Judas's brother, had joined battle with Nicanor, but was somewhat discomfited through the sudden silence of his enemies. 2 Esdras, chapter 7. And when I had made an end of speaking these words, there was sent unto me the angel which had been sent unto me the nights afore. And he said unto me, Up, Esdras, and hear the words that I am come to tell thee. And I said, Speak on, my God. Then he said unto me, The sea is set in a wide place, that it might be deep and great. But put the case the entrance were narrow, and like a river. Who then could go into the sea and look upon it, and to rule it? If he went not through the narrow, how could he come into the broad? There is also another thing. A city is builded, and set upon a broad field, and is full of all good things. The entrance thereof is narrow, and is set in a dangerous place to fall, like as if there were a fire on the right hand, and on the left a deep water. And only one path between them both, even between the fire and the water, so small that there could but one man go there at once. If this city now were given unto a man for an inheritance, if he never shall pass the danger set before it, how shall he receive his inheritance? And I said, It is so, Lord. And he said unto me, Even so is Israel's portion, because for their sakes I made the world, and when Adam transgressed my statutes, then was decreed that now is done. Then were the entrances of this world made narrow, full of sorrow and travail. They are but few and evil, full of perils, and very painful. For the entrances of the elder world were wide and sure, and brought immortal fruit. If then they that live labor not to enter these straight and vain things, they can never receive those that are laid up for them. Now therefore, why disquietest thou thyself, seeing thou art but a corruptible man? And why art thou moved, whereas thou art but mortal? Why hast thou not considered in thy mind this thing that is to come, rather than that which is present? Then answered I and said, O Lord that bearest rule, thou hast ordained in thy law that the righteous should inherit these things, but that the ungodly should perish. Nevertheless, the righteous shall suffer straight things, and hope for wide. For they that have done wickedly have suffered the straight things, and yet shall not see the wide. He said unto me, There is no judge above God, and none that hath understanding above the highest. For there be many that perish in this life, because they despise the law of God that is set before them. For God hath given straight commandment to such as came, what they should do to live, even as they came, and what they should observe to avoid punishment. Nevertheless, they were not obedient unto him, but spake against him, and imagined vain things, and deceived themselves by their wicked deeds, and said the Most High, that he is not, and knew not his ways. But his law they have despised, and denied his covenants. In his statutes they have not been faithful, and have not performed his works. And therefore, Esdras, for the empty are empty things, and for the full are the full things. Behold, the time shall come that these tokens which I have told thee shall come to pass, and the bride shall appear, and she coming forth shall be seen, that now is withdrawn from the earth. And whosoever is delivered from the aforesaid evils shall see my wonders. For my son Jesus shall be revealed with those to be with him, and they that remain shall rejoice within 400 years. After these years shall my son Christ die, and all men that have life. And the world shall be turned into the old silence 7 days, like as in the former judgments, so that no man shall remain. And after 7 days the world, that yet not awaketh, shall be raised up, and that shall die that is corrupt. And the earth shall restore those that are asleep in her, and so shall the dust those dwell in silence, and the secret places shall deliver those souls that were committed unto them. And the Most High shall appear upon the seat of judgment, and misery shall pass away, and the long suffering shall have an end. But judgment only shall remain, truth shall stand, and faith shall wax strong. And the work shall follow, and the reward shall be showed, and the good deeds shall be of force, and wicked deeds shall bear no rule. Then said I, Abraham prayed first for the Sodomites, and Moses for the fathers that sinned in the wilderness, and Jesus after him for Israel in the time of Achan, and Samuel and David for the destruction, and Solomon for them that should come to the sanctuary, and Elias for those that received rain, and for the dead, that he might live, and Ezekias for the people in the time of Sennacherib, and many for many. Even so now, seeing corruption is grown up, and wickedness increased, and the righteous have prayed for the ungodly, wherefore shall it not be so now also? He answered me and said, This present life is not the end where much glory doth abide, therefore have they prayed for the weak. But the day of doom shall be the end of this time, and the beginning of the immortality for to come, wherein corruption is past. Intemperance is at an end, infidelity is cut off, righteousness is grown, and truth is sprung up. Then shall no man be able to save him that is destroyed, nor to oppress him that hath gotten the victory. I answered then and said, This is my first and last saying, that it had been better not to have given the earth unto Adam, or else when it was given him, to restrain him from sinning. For what profit is it for men now, in this present time, to live in heaviness, and after death to look for punishment? O thou, Adam, what hast thou done? For though it was thou that sinned, thou art not fallen alone, but we all that come of thee. For what profit is it unto us, if there be promised us an immortal time, whereas we have done the works that bring death? And that there is promised us an everlasting hope, whereas ourselves being most wicked are made vain. And that there are laid up for us dwellings of health and safety, whereas we have lived wickedly. And that the glory of the Most High is kept to defend them which have led a weary life, whereas we have walked in the most wicked ways of all. And that there should be showed a paradise, whose fruit endureth forever, wherein is security and medicine, since we shall not enter into it, for we have walked in unpleasant places. That the faces of them which have been used to abstinence shall shine above the stars, whereas our faces shall be blacker than darkness. For while we lived and committed iniquity, we considered not that we should begin to suffer for it after death. Then answered he me, and said, This is the condition of the battle, which man that is born upon the earth shall fight. That, if he be overcome, he shall suffer as thou hast said, but if he get the victory, he shall receive the thing that I say. For this is the life whereof Moses spake unto the people while he lived, saying, Choose thee life, that thou mayest live. Nevertheless, they believed not him, nor yet the prophets after him, no, nor me, which have spoken unto them, that there should not be such heaviness in their destruction, as shall be joy over them that are persuaded to salvation. I answered then and said, I know, Lord, that the Most High is called merciful, in that he hath mercy upon them which are not yet come into the world, and upon those also that turn to his law, and that he is patient, and long suffereth those that have sinned as his creatures, and that he is bountiful, for he is ready to give where it needeth. and that he is of great mercy, for he multiplieth more and more mercies to them that are present, and that are past, and also to them which are to come. For if he shall not multiply his mercies, the world will not continue with them that inherit therein. And he pardoneth, for if he did not so of his goodness, that they which have committed iniquities might have been eased of them, the 10,000th part of men should not remain living. And being judge, if he should not forgive them that are cured with his word, and put out the multitudes of contentions, there should be very few left, peradventure, an innumerable multitude. The Acts of the Apostles, chapter 26. Then Agrippa said unto Paul, Thou art permitted to speak for thyself. Then Paul stretched forth the hand, and answered for himself. I think myself happy, King Agrippa, because I shall answer for myself this day before thee, touching all the things whereof I am accused of the Jews. Especially because I know thee to be an expert in all customs and questions which are among the Jews. Wherefore I beseech thee to hear me patiently. My manner of life from my youth, which was at the first among mine own nation at Jerusalem, know all the Jews, which knew me from the beginning, if they would testify that after the most straightest sect of our religion I lived a Pharisee. And now I stand and am judged for the hope of the promise made of God unto our fathers, unto which promise our 12 tribes, instantly serving God day and night, hope to come. For which hope's sake, King Agrippa, I am accused of the Jews. Why should it be thought a thing incredible with you, that God should raise the dead? I verily thought with myself that I ought to do many things contrary to the name of Jesus of Nazareth. Which thing I also did in Jerusalem, and many of the saints did I shut up in prison, having received authority from the chief priests, and when they were put to death, I gave my voice against them. And I punished them oft in every synagogue, and compelled them to blaspheme, and being exceedingly mad against them, I persecuted them, even unto strange cities. Whereupon, as I went to Damascus with authority and commission from the chief priests, at midday, O king, I saw in the way a light from heaven, above the brightness of the sun, shining round about me, and them which journeyed with me. And when we were all fallen to the earth, I heard a voice speaking unto me, and saying in the Hebrew tongue, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. And I said, Who art thou, Lord? And he said, I am Jesus, whom thou persecutest. But rise, and stand upon thy feet, for I have appeared unto thee for this purpose, to make thee a minister and a witness, both of these things which thou hast seen, and of those things in which I will appear unto thee, delivering thee from the people and from the Gentiles, unto whom I now send thee, to open their eyes, and to turn them from darkness to light, and from the power of Satan unto God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins, and inheritance among them which are sanctified by faith that is in me. Whereupon, O King Agrippa, I was not disobedient unto the heavenly vision, but showed first unto them at Damascus, and at Jerusalem, and throughout all the coasts of Judea, and then to the Gentiles, that they should repent and turn to God, and do works meet for repentance. For these causes the Jews caught me in the temple, and went about to kill me. Having therefore obtained help from God, I continue unto this day, witnessing both to small and great, saying none other things than those which the prophets and Moses did say should come, that Christ should suffer, and that he should be the first that should rise from the dead, and should show light unto the people and to the Gentiles. And as he thus spake for himself, Festus said with a loud voice, Paul, thou art beside thyself. Much learning doth make thee mad. But he said, I am not mad, most noble Festus, but speak forth the words of truth and soberness. For the king knoweth of these things, before whom also I speak freely. For I am persuaded that none of these things are hidden from him. For this thing was not done in a corner. King Agrippa, believest thou the prophets? I know that thou believest. Then Agrippa said unto Paul, Almost thou persuadest me to be a Christian. And Paul said, I would to God that not only thou, but also all that hear me this day, were both almost and altogether such as I am, except these bonds. And when he had thus spoken, the king rose up, and the governor, and Bernice, and they that sat with them. And when they were gone aside, they talked between themselves, saying, This man doeth nothing worthy of death or of bonds. Then said Agrippa unto Festus, This man might have been set at liberty, if he had not appealed unto Caesar.